With that, I'm looking there. Oh, way to go, Leslie. That's always a thing. In fact, I'm looking at my screen and there's a big thing that says recorded.
Thanks for the reminder, Donna.
That happens. What that's the other thing. Serena, you called out the speed. Sometimes modern elders have to have big prompts here to remember what's going on. So, outdoor spaces and buildings. Do I have I know that Georgianne Gotzi and Tyler Huck were going to be joining us. I don't know if they're on yet, but I guess I'm going to, as a prelude, I wanted them to briefly share a story because during our one of our cohort meetings this fall, we usually focus, we have guest speakers come, we focus on some topics, and then there's often open discussion. And it was during that open discussion that that Georgianne shared some things that were happening in Harrison Township, and almost like a happy discovery of something that they didn't really think about. And I know they're coming on with pictures, and okay, here it is. I feel like I gotta keep filling. I'm not gonna keep filling. I will tell you that there was a wonderful project with a walking track, okay? And it was funded, everybody was excited, but it was in developing this, my understanding and remembrance is that they put their age-friendly lens on and they said, you know, maybe there could be an inner track too, that's maybe just a shorter round. And maybe there's a few benches. And those are the kinds of conversations and stories that unfold within our network. And I might add, there are also funding opportunities, grants offered by our generous, Don Ambrose. This program is happening thanks to him as far as the fellows. And grants have been offered to communities to do assessments, to move through the process of certification. And so there you have it. There's my time. And you know what, Leslie? Maybe during one of our breaks, we will
That'd be great.
have Georgianne and Tyler take 2 minutes to share a few photos and a little more details about their story. How does that sound?
That sounds great. Thanks, Donna. Thanks for kicking this off. Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone is doing very well this morning. Thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. Some of you have introduced yourself in the chat box, but we'd love to know who you are and what your interest is if you want to put some in the chat box. I know I saw some folks from Cuyahoga County who registered, Shelby, and people really from across the state. So that's exciting.
I think I turned it off. I'm not really sure.
This is one of quarterly meetings, Miami Valley Age Friendly Network quarterly meetings. We've been using this time together to focus on a domain, a specific domain. So this one clearly is the outdoor spaces and buildings domain. And we're excited to introduce a great group of speakers who represent this work very well and who've been doing this for quite a long time, and really have a lot of background and expertise in how to make buildings and open spaces, outdoor spaces, accessible for all ages, and really focus on the livability of our communities in regards to the parks and public spaces, really, and how you create placemaking that allows people to feel comfortable and welcome regardless of who they are, how old they are, and their abilities. So we're looking forward to that. I'm Leslie King. Today is 6 months at Miami Valley Regional Planning Commission. So I'm pretty excited to celebrate my 6-month mark here. Looks like Mary Ellen has her hand raised, actually. Does someone have a question already? Anyway, please type in the chat if you have questions and we will have discussion soon. So I'm the Director of Regional Environment and Economic Development here. We're closely with Donna and Serena on our age-friendly work. Serena's been involved for quite a while. She's on the call as well, one of our MVRPC staff members. But we have Becky Benet, Ellen Sizer, and Kevin Swanson here today to share their experiences, their work, their stories. Because what I've learned with age-friendly work, it's a lot of sharing of stories and experiences that gets you into this and passionate about it. And it touches all of us in some way or another, whether it's our own aging process, our family members, and those around us. And so our first speaker is Becky Benet. I'll introduce her in length here in a moment. We also have Ellen Sizer, who's a city planner with the city of Dayton, and I'll introduce her a little more when she speaks. and Kevin Swanson with Miami County Parks, who is the Deputy Director and has been there quite a while. First speaker is Becky Benet, and she is the retired CEO from Five Rivers Metro Parks. Hopefully some of you know her. Over 40 years experience working in parks and recreation and conservation. She also previously spearheaded our livability pillar and age-friendly work in our Institute for Livable Equitable Communities. So she is no stranger to this work. And we kindly gave her also about 6 months to just retire before we asked her to help us and pitch back in and help us, share these experiences and programs to really maximize how we can implement this into our communities. And so luckily she volunteered willingly, even though, she is in her second encore. We decided she's going to find an encore career here. So I'm going to share my screen and then pass it over to Becky. Can everyone see this?
I can see it. This is
Excellent.
Becky.
And Becky in the spring also, when she stepped down from her community leadership role with Metro Parks, received our regional partnership award. And it was just quite a moment at our annual spring dinner to see her be able to see all of us be able to celebrate her legacy here in Dayton with Metro Parks. And we surprised her. She had no idea. And it was a moment. I don't know. So I just wanted
It was a moment.
It was a moment.
A nice moment.
It's all you, Becky.
All right. Oh, thanks. And I really appreciate being asked to participate on this subject matter. I am myself very passionate about it. I can remember before I turned 50, because of course I'm over 50 now, starting to get notices from AARP. And I'm like, why would I need that information? And I actually just started getting the information back then. And there's such a great source of data and resources through ARP that I'm going to share a little bit about that as we proceed. But thank you again. My perspective today, what I'm going to spend a little bit of time on, is really talking more of a high level viewpoint about age-friendly communities, age-friendly parks, and why I'm so passionate about it. Not only am I considered, I hope to be considered an active older adult, is how I like to say it. But now that I have retired from my position with Metro Parks, which was last April, I am so learning things about myself I never knew. Because I'm working for all those years, where do I go to stay engaged? Where do I go to stay not just engaged physically, but emotionally, mentally? How do I continue to feel like I'm a valued member of the community? And hopefully others in the community still value anyone who's considered an older adult because of the years of experience and hopefully wisdom and the things we've learned from the good, the bad, and the ugly in terms as we have progressed through our lives. So I'm really excited to talk to you about a couple of things. And the first thing I really want to hit on, I'm going to give you a couple of little statistics, but because I think it's important. So if Leslie, if you can go to the next slide, and many of you probably already know this, and please, those of you, I see there's a lot of experts in this area of aging. I'm looking at the list of folks who are here today, but our population, they've been saying it, we're aging. And believe it or not, by 2030 in the United States, 1 of every 5 people in the United States will be 65 or older, and I'm in that category myself. I'm a baby boomer towards the end of the baby boomers, but I'm part of that age demographic. And then 2034, which is really something that I think is telling, and in Montgomery County in particular, and I know other counties are going down that direction too, is that there will be older adults adults older than 65, there'll be more of them than children under the age of 18. And that's coming out of ARP and the U.S. Census Bureau. And so not that the other age categories aren't growing too, there are some that are, but something to really pay attention to as we're looking at how do we design our parks, our facilities, our programs, our services for a population that is very large and wants to stay active as much as possible. I mean, the attitudes about aging, think about it, internet. I can remember in 1990, I think it was like 1990, when we got our first fax machine with the city of Phoenix, Arizona. We were so excited, you know, technology. We now think about the technology and medical research that's been going on. I'm a user of the Good Feet store. You know, you see that on commercials, and it's true. They can help your arches. But you know, there's things out there, artificial joints, smartwatches, things that will help and is helping not only the aging population, but the general population. So technology is helping us be more active and want to get involved and stay active in our communities. And then just as I mentioned, access to information. You know, there's so much information, sometimes good, sometimes bad, that you can get on the internet. To learn about your own health, about places where you can go to be physically active or to get away. I mean, all of that was not here when I was born, and that kind of information. And so that helps in terms of where is the aging population headed. And then just to get a little more micro into the next slide, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but the one thing, I go back one. There you go. The census has a page called How Has Our Nation's Population Changed? I put the link in there at the bottom, but it just kind of shows you in 2020, so 3 years ago, you know, where we were in 2020 for ages under the age 18 and 65 and older. So you can already see, you know, some of those, not all of them, but some of those categories were already headed toward that 65 and older age group. So again, I'm a big proponent of data. So if you can find data about your community and how you manage to provide services based on that data, that's incredibly helpful. Okay, next slide, please. So I'm going to touch a little bit, because I think this is important to remember as we are planning our programs, our parks, our services to the community, that we don't forget what COVID's impact was on everyone across the world. But those of us in parks and recreation in particular, or those of us providing services to the public, it was an unbelievable impact on usage of parks. Because as we all know, there were so many people who were trying to figure out, I need to do something. The isolation that it caused, and people sought out outdoor spaces in particular. A lot of the indoor facilities were closed. And at Metro Parks in 2020, March of 2020, in that spring, we experienced about a 40% increase. And I know in other places, as many or more, that was happening. And and new users, people who had never really paid attention or thought, oh, well, I could go to a park here. So the awareness and usage of parks and the amenities that are provided have changed, sometimes have changed about what people need and want based on new users, based on, I mean, I'll give an example. Just, we took out the trash cans for a while because, you know, nobody knew about whether or not we should be touching them. And it was cleaning requirements, all those things. And after COVID, you know, gave us a break, we started to put some trash cans back, but we didn't put as many back as before. And it helped with staffing levels, as well as it helped with people carried out. We did not see tremendous trash in our parks as we thought we might. And so, you know, it changed about some of the ways we thought about how do we design our parks and what do people really need and want. I mentioned this already, but I'll call it, you probably have seen it off and on, importance of forest and nature bathing. And that's really just getting into nature. Think about how you feel. Donna was talking about, did anybody go out and walk outside? I know when I go outside and I'm out there, it's just I hate to use this, breath of fresh air, because it really does help your body. It helps your mental state. just to get out and get into the forest or get outside and enjoy being in nature. And then we in our communities need to continue to remind our community members that we were a go-to destination for outdoor activities, that don't forget us. Because when you start talking about funding and people start wanting to go back to the way, funding was, or we start to move forward and we want to forget COVID, most of us do. We can't let people forget how important the services of our parks and programs and facilities were and still are to the community. Okay, next one. So I love this picture because I was trying to depict how people think about, I'm only think about my own grandparents. This was not my grandmother. My grandmother was from the Depression era. My grandmother worked hard. When my grandma retired, she was not very physically active. She was very socially active. But the idea of what does, getting older mean is changing and I think obviously for the better. And so I saw this picture. I thought, I aspire to be like her, maybe not on a skateboard, but I aspire to be like this lady and have the attitude that she is displaying, and having that ability and the services available to me to be able to enjoy that. So I think sometimes when people think, oh, you're old, you talk to a 25-year-old or you think back to yourself and you think, oh my God, I just turned 63 myself. So I'm thinking, oh, 60, oh my Lord, and back then. Now I'm like, oh, that's young. Come on, that's a young number. But a lot of times only we limit ourselves, or others impose their view on us. And I just saw the show about Diana Nygaard, who was a swimmer at the age of 64, who swam from Cuba to Florida, age 64. And so, a lot of times we put our own limits, and we might hurt and wake up and maybe have some, aches and pains. But when we're looking at programming, when we're looking at designing at services, we need to keep in mind, yes, we need to have a variety of services. And when I worked with 5 Rivers Metro Parks, I would always say bird watching is important, and it is. But don't stereotype the entire older population to think that all we want is the passive kind of exercise or passive kind of activities. And so, think about the boom of pickleball. Now, we don't provide that in our parks, but a lot of community parks do. That has exploded. And a lot of it is older adults playing that. And bird watching has exploded over the years. So, you have to really look at the needs of your community and what the community wants, obviously. Safety and accessibility. And a lot of these things are across demographics. It's not just aging, but, when we created a master plan in 2016 and we did a community survey, and we found that one of the priorities was, trails for us are number one amenity, and people want different kinds of trails and be connected. So how do you get there? How do you get off, let's say if you use public transportation, how do you get to the park? What does it take to get there? Is it a paved sidewalk? Is it a paved is it stone? Is it a mile away, half a mile away? How do people feel safe? Is there directional signage? All those things are critical for people feeling comfortable that they can get to a location safely and not get hit by a bus or a car, but to get there safely and feel good about that. Easy access to restrooms. I know in planning parks, restrooms are expensive, but if you want not just older adults, but if you want people who have young kids, having restrooms available strategically is very important, or having signage to where people can, feel like they know where they're going. We have a thing called CEPTED, which we work And it's to look from a law enforcement perspective, look how you design your parks. You work with, there's standards there about line of sight, the kind of vegetation you have, the lighting you have. Where do you put restrooms? You know, do you need to make sure they're in visible places? And CPTED is important as you're designing your parks. Very helpful in making sure that you're trying to look ahead about things that you don't want to have to worry about, but they are there in terms of safety. How many of you, and you don't have to raise your hand, but you can do it just in your head, how many of you have pets? I'm guessing a lot of people have pets. I have a pet. According to American Pet Products Association, in the United States in 2023, 66% of our population has a pet. And so, you know, we talk a lot about dog parks, and dog parks are important, or access to let your pet, typically it's a pet that's in the park, usually, not always, but people value their pets. I know I value he's like a member of my family. He's 15 and a half years old. He's an older dog. In people years, he's 105, you know, but he still goes outside. And so, you know, when you're thinking about your buildings, you're thinking about what's allowed, your rules, remember, you got a lot of pet owners out there, and not that they have to be everywhere, but that is certainly something that has continued to grow in terms of people having pets in their families. Community gatherings. When we did our community survey, the number one type of program and service was festivals and music venues. People wanted a place to go to. Obviously, COVID impacted that, if you recall. And people, after we could start to bring people back, were just think about the different outdoor public venues that are there and how many people go to them. People want that social connection. And for older adults, that's critical. And I'm learning that even myself. You have your work life and then you don't have your work life. How do you stay socially engaged, mentally engaged? And one way to do that is with outdoor gatherings. In our survey also for Montgomery County anyway, having programs and services for older adults ranked in their top 5 priorities. And that was in 2016. So we started to change some of our how we're looking at the future in designing our parks and facilities and programs based on what the community said was a priority. And that's, again, getting to know what does your community want and need, and what do the demographics look like. We mentioned fitness and health. You know, again, you see the lady on the screen, but that fitness and health is, as I mentioned, just critical to not just the physical well-being, but the mental and emotional. From COVID, and I know other park and recreation agencies have done this, we created some mindfulness trails. That the trails were pretty much already there. And we had signage about just stopping and taking a breath. Doesn't matter how old you are. Or heart healthy trails, like creating that fitness level opportunity for different kinds of age demographics or fitness levels, and having parks that are identified as heart friendly so people can get out there and monitor themselves. There's a lot of technology these days where you can track what you're doing. I do that when I hike our different metro parks. And so having ways for people to hold themselves accountable and also feel good about when they're out there measuring how they're doing. We all know there are food deserts, and food is incredibly a big issue in terms of especially access to local healthy foods, and making sure community gardens are very popular, as many of you do know. And really looking at it became apparent when COVID hit in the food chain. Remember that? Not just food, but any kind of chain that depended on delivery and distribution became a big challenge. So the supply chain was really a challenge. And then, of course, inflation. So think about, I know our Metro Parks has community gardens. They have programs on sustainable foods, the Second Street Market, and I know in other parts of the different counties, there are similar efforts to figure out ways to get healthy food to people, not just the processed food, but the healthy food, and teach people how to grow it. That's a continued interest, especially with climate change. I included in here extreme weather and disruptions because it's happening, and I anticipate it's going to continue to happen. You think about in 2019 and tornadoes. In some ways, we're still recovering. I mean, the trees that were lost, the homes that were lost, some of the livelihoods that were lost. And that's not just for older adults, but they are certainly, how do you communicate? How do you take care of those folks? And having an emergency plan, which I hope most agencies have, is to figure out it's going to happen again. And I hate to say it, but with the way the world is, disruptions, whether it's climate change or something else, we have to be prepared for plan A, B, and C to continue to make sure we can provide vital services, getting medicine to people that may need it. How do we help people continue to be not isolated and continue to have connection to their communities? And then that nature connection and protection, how do we as individuals get connected to nature? How do we do our part with the world? And this is supposed to be the hottest year on record, and they anticipate that's going to continue to happen. And so what does that mean to pollinators, for example? I know, planting pollinators in your yard, put them in your parks, giving those bees and insects a way to pollinate plants, and which become food. So, looking at different ways of how do you design your parks, your open spaces, and your facilities with, for example, flooding. We've lost bridges in our parks because of flooding. And so, looking at the design opportunities that can help you survive, hopefully, and recover quickly as best as possible, those types of challenges. And so with that, I have about 3 minutes. I'm trying to time this so I stay on track, Leslie. So I just want to share, there's so many resources out there, including the people that are in this room, of course, or in the Zoom chat, I should say. But I do want to share some resources for you that you may want to check into. So the first one, and some of you know about this, National Recreation Park Association. Each of these slides has a link to it. And it's just a wealth of information about what on a national level, the National Recreation and Park Association is doing to help communities address helping stay healthy as well as healthy aging. So that is one particular resource. The next one is ART that I mentioned before. And this is a great resource about livable parks. And of course, I learned about more of this when I was on the committee, but they have free publications. And this is one of them, Creating Parks and Public Spaces for People of All Ages. And it's a step-by-step guide. I mean, they give you some really good tools there that can really help you move your agency along to continue to be livable. And the next one is called the Center for Outreach, Research, and Education through PlayCorps. And they have a research arm that have a variety of different publications, case studies. They have a wealth of information about funding. There's a link on their page called US Funding Tool, and you can look at it by state, by county, by the national. I'm not sure about state, or county, but state and national. You can break it down that way to all the resources that they have listed that have links to a variety of different funding sources for parks and livable communities. And then the one I'm showing you, this particular, if you go back one, Leslie, I pulled it out because it's called Adult Fitness Parks. And there's also a publication about intergenerational fitness parks. And so again, funding is always a challenge. So look at the funding link as well as the different publications that are there. Okay, next one. I'm almost done. Another one is City Park Alliance. And the City Park Alliance also has a publication that you can click on, and it's called Active Parks, Healthy Cities, City Park Alliance, and they are a great resource about livable communities, as well as having healthy cities for all ages. And then the last one is, of course, I had to highlight the local, regional. Miami Valley Regional Planning Commission has an open space plan that was completed in 2016, still very applicable. And it looks at the region in terms of how we plan for open space. And again, I included the links there. And I also included links to the 3 agencies that are presenting today. Metroparks.org, that's 5 Rivers Metro Parks, Miami County Parks, who you'll hear from, and DaytonOhio.gov. And again, I'm just honored to be here. I hope this was informational and helpful to you. And thank you for having me.
Thank you, Becky.
I am right
for,
on target, Leslie.
You are, and we have a couple minutes to follow up on what Becky shared before we jump on to Ellen. So thanks. We asked Becky to provide a high level take on the work based on her decades of experience doing this before it became a trend, right? Before we started thinking about this in such a defined way. So I am happy you brought up the extreme weather events, because I do just want to point out in my mind that, livable communities are also resilient communities. And as you mentioned, there's a lot to offer. Like, our older adults have a lot to offer in regards to their expertise, their wisdom, their time, right? And how they can engage in those conversations. And so through the Coalition of Age-Friendly Communities of Ohio, CAFCO, they've started a subgroup, a sub-interest group called the Gray Green Alliance. And I'm going to put a link in the chat about something they wrote recently. But if you want to engage in that climate talk and resiliency discussion, the Gray Green Alliance is a great avenue for that. And they're looking for people who want to be engaged. So looks like Tony has her hand up and has a question. Hi, Tony.
Hi there. So interesting. You mentioned something, Becky, called what I heard it as septet, something to do with police and sightlines. Did I
Yes.
get that right? Could you send me, put a link in, or?
Yes. I will pull that up. It's I did put in the acronym, and I always just call it septed, but it's CPTED. But I will get the link and what in this today, and I'll try to put it into the chat.
Thank you.
Yes.
What does that acronym stand for, Becky?
I said, that's what I said. I always
Oh,
call
you're
it
looking into, okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
That's a new one for me.
One of those acronyms, sorry. But I'll look it up. And
I'm gonna chime in. It's crime prevention through environmental design.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm going to put it in the chat here.
Thanks, Donna. That's great.
Yes.
Any other questions and follow up with Becky before we move on? Donna, was there anything in the chat?
There was lots of stuff in the chat, but in the interest of time, we're going to probably move forward. I will tell everyone, keep chiming in. We're going to pause from time to time for Q&A, but any questions we don't get to, watch for some kind of wrap-up document after Thanksgiving where we just try to track down the answers to questions. We're so glad you're here.
Excellent. So the other part of the domain, outdoor spaces and buildings. And so we want to just think about public spaces broadly and how we're designing them to be accessible for all ages. Things like seating, right? And proper areas to rest, right? Appropriate bathrooms for all people, elevators, 0-step entries, right? All these things that make our parks, our public spaces more accessible and user-friendly. So our next speaker who's going to share, Ellen Sizer, is working for the City of Dayton as a city planner. City of Dayton is one of our newer age-friendly communities. They joined this year. They're in their first year of planning and doing their needs assessment, but she's not new to age-friendly work. She has a master's degree in community planning from the University of Cincinnati, and she's spent time working in Clinton County developing programs for accessibility and age-friendly, making her community there that she worked in more livable for all ages. So she's going to share with us a bench project that she participated in and hopefully also, or that she led, and then hopefully also how she's applying what she learned there to her work now in Dayton, and how she's really using, this opportunity to engage across all these aspects of the work with the city is a lot bigger than her last community that she was working in. So I'm pretty excited for what she's going to bring to the table. She's already working with Metro Parks and aspects of accessibility and livability. So I'm really excited about what she brings to the table. And I'm going to pass it over to you, Ellen. And I just met Ellen maybe a couple months ago, and I have a feeling we're going to see a lot of each other in the coming years.
Hello, thank you so much, Leslie. I appreciate that introduction. You looked me up, you stalked me about my master's degree.
I did.
It's okay. But yes, as Leslie said, I'm Ellen. I worked in Clinton County as a planner for about 2 years, and a lot of that was doing age-friendly work. And I was lucky enough to just do the implementation portion mostly of the age-friendly plan that was put together. So I have a lot of experience getting those projects together and all the fun stuff that comes with that. And so that's what I'm going to mostly talk about today. So if you could do next slide, please. So yes, I just went over the 8 domains that are under livable, age-friendly of AARP, and just the one that we're talking about today is outdoor spaces and buildings. So, but as you can tell, there's a lot of different sectors that it touches on, and no one thing is in its own silo. So just keep that in mind. So next slide. So yeah, so age-friendly benches. First of all, what are they? So age-friendly benches can be considered just benches that are more sturdy. So this right here is metal, and then as well as higher off the ground. So this one is about 30 to 36 inches off the ground, when usually it's about under 20, and it has handlebars at the end. There are also other benches you can get where there's a handlebar in the middle of it if someone is sitting in the middle and it's easier to get up. But I chose these benches just because they're more conducive for more people to sit, as well as I think they're prettier. But in this picture, you can see that there's the Clinton County employees are installing the benches around what is Wilmington's courthouse. And so this was part of our initiative to have more outdoor space and livable space, because before I got there, there were a couple benches in the Wilmington downtown, and a lot of them were, businesses just put out a bench, but there wasn't any initiative behind it to make it more livable and walkable, other than these benches right here. So you could do next slide, please. I just wanted to touch on this of the other things that I worked on when I was in Clinton County, and this was installing curb cuts. So in Planneries, it's a way to calm down traffic so people slow down. There's this really busy intersection in the downtown Wilmington. If anyone is familiar with it, it's basically a highway, but it shouldn't be. And so there's just been a lot of pedestrian accidents in this intersection. So with a lot of source funding with the city, as well as I worked for the county, so I was a little bit of an outsider coming in, but it just eliminated some of the turn lanes that have been most treacherous for people. And this also made the speed limit go down significantly. So they work. It's just it's a lot of work. So, and next slide, please. The other thing I wanted to touch on that I worked on was also trail extensions within the downtown. So this trail extension is not the square, but it's just a little bit off of the square in Wilmington. And it might not seem like a lot. These things might not seem like a lot to the big city that I am in now, but in Clinton County, it was the talk of the town of all these things that I'm doing. And it was overall positive, which was great. And so this one, Becky said earlier, just the importance of trails, and people generally love trails. And so this was just part of the larger plan to connect all the trails in Wilmington and continue on, not just country roads, but create designated trails for pedestrian and biking. So those are the safest routes. Next slide, please. Yes, and this is just giving you kind of an idea of what the trail looks like and how paved it is and how big it is. And this is a beloved trail in Wilmington, especially. And so it was really important to have this extension and, you know, connect more neighbors together. So next slide. And then I just wanted to end kind of where, just giving a general overview of where the benches were or are, they're not were. And so I just wanted to highlight that. So I ordered about 15 new age-friendly benches that you saw at the beginning. And then the courthouse had those like concrete wooden benches. And I worked with like I was part of a leadership group. And so I had a group of volunteers paint them and make them green. And so as you can see here where the orange or yellow boxes are, yes, thank you, are where the reused benches are. And so we have about 20 new benches in the downtown Wilmington, which had almost none. So it made a significant impact. And I'm known as the bench queen now in Wilmington. So so it was really exciting, and I was really proud to have something physical be left behind in Wilmington that everyone can use. And then the one thing I wanted to touch on is grant funding. These benches aren't exactly cheap. And so what I did is similar to the Dayton Foundation, I use the Clinton County Foundation, and it's a similar process of applying for a certain amount of money and all that. But there are other resources as well, especially in Dayton. The library has designated just help to find grants and resources to apply for them and such. And so once you get that ball rolling, I will say, like, once you apply to like 3 grants, you get asked to apply to more. So it works out. There's always a way. And but the biggest thing was getting that funding, and also like getting the city to back it up. Just because I was a county person, I had a little bit more ways to go in order to get approval, but it all worked out in the end. And then the last thing I wanted to touch on is what I'm doing now. So as you said, Leslie, that this is much bigger. So there's a lot. I didn't realize just how different it will be, but it's actually kind of exciting. And also what Leslie also mentioned was we like literally just got age-friendly designated like October 4th, I think. We are officially an age-friendly city. And so that's not exactly an easy feat either. So it's really exciting that we have this like marker to go off of, and kind of how I'm transitioning my previous experience, especially in the outdoor space realm domain, is through our also recently adopted active transportation plan. And so that is where Metro Parks we've been working with, and trails and all such things. So it's just making it extremely accessible for anyone who walk, bike, or ride in the downtown, especially, and outside into the neighborhoods of Dayton. So we're really excited, and we're working on creating kind of a game plan of what to tackle first, and kind of make those connections physically and also with programming. I'm also leading the charge of applying for Safe Routes to School, which is a pretty well-known grant application, but in case people don't know, is I'm kind of taking our active transportation plan and applying it to the Safe Routes to School, so that children and high schoolers can safely travel to and from their home or a community center to school. And the only reason I'm mentioning this is in addition to that, I'm creating kind of a program for Safe Routes for Seniors. I don't love the seniors, but it has an alliteration and I like that. But Safe Routes for Seniors is a similar program I'm creating. And so it's not like a new concept, but it just highlights the need for advocacy and the need that not just younger people need help accessing different areas, especially within community centers and to services. So I'm hoping to link all three together. That is one thing I learned with in Wilmington especially, is it's easier to get things done when you kind of like kill two birds with one stone. So I'm just kind of piggybacking off of what the work's already done. So I'm excited. Excited to write the plan. I'm excited to get, just more general advocacy and momentum build up for older adults in Dayton and also all ages. So yeah, with that, that concludes what I have to say. I think we have some time. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I'll be here till the end.
Now, I like the way that you're layering all these things and putting them in together as a comprehensive plan for Dayton and embedding age-friendly in that. I'm a little curious about the neighborhood parks in Dayton, what kind of potential you see with, the city's parks themselves, and if there's any conversation, with the Recreation and Parks Department on looking at the livability and accessibility of those parks. Do they have benches? Are you going to become the bench queen of Dayton? Is that... I could see that happening. Anything to share in that?
Yeah, I'm not against being called the bench queen of Dayton either. Yeah, so right now there's a lot of effort and grant money from the federal government into some of these housing projects, but in addition, creating more connections to neighborhoods in our parks. So there's one project I'm collaborating with some of the other planners here of creating an easier, more gentle slope into a park that is part of the Wolf Creek. So we're like kind of shifting the levee. And so that will create more access to the levee from the east and west, south and north and south, that what didn't exist before. So if I would show you a bit of image, but just imagine just kind of like you have your creek and then you have your park and then you kind of have your neighborhoods on both sides. This gentle slope will allow access into the park that will be easier, honestly, for pedestrians to get in and visibility. So it's not like it's a huge project, but at the end of the day, it just creates this natural welcoming part that I think is what planners are all about. Is I don't want you to know what I'm doing. I just want it to be integrated. So this is just one of the many different things that Metro Parks, as well as working with public affairs, trying to make them generally more accessible and safe.
That's great. Yeah. And for people who want to learn more about that, they can get on the Dayton Riverfront Plan website and see images, and the Wolf Creek corridor is what's considered the community corridor. And there's a lot of great plans and projects in that Riverfront Master Plan along all of our river corridors to create connections to the neighborhoods, right? And so I'm glad you brought up that example. In my previous role, I worked closely with Walnut Hills and Linden Heights neighborhood around their Cleveland Park, and spent many years working with the Neighborhood Leadership Association in those neighborhoods to enhance and improve that park. And one of the things we landed on in the multi-year engagement was that drinking fountains are also a big part of this, right? And how you really look at infrastructure in general, right? So the benches, are there restrooms? Not every park can have a restroom, but the ones that have the most users, right, might need one. Therefore, they might need a drinking fountain, and not just a drinking fountain, but a drinking fountain that's accessible to people, right?
Yeah.
How do you approach the drinking fountain? And so we did a lot of benchmarking. We met with the city of Dayton several times. And the hope and the plan was that they were going to embed the drinking fountain project into the federal funding that they had when they do the park enhancements. And so the water department got excited, even they wanted to brand them, right? And so just something to think about, right? Becky, I think you were going to make a comment, or...
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in a little bit there too, is the importance of whether you do focus groups of some kind of the potential users of that location, of that particular park. I mean, we might think we know, but it's really helpful if you understand what your demographics are around the park, of the service area that you're going to serve, and then make sure that you're actually soliciting suggestions, because many times they have things that I would have never thought of.
Right.
And so having that time to ask folks about that you may not be able to do everything, but it's really helpful to get a kind of a sense of what people feel are the priorities for them in a specific service area.
Yeah, that's a great point, because it was attending their meetings that we learned that, right, from them. And they built and developed their own dog park up beyond Cleveland Park. And that's when it led to, like, if you have an active community engaged like that, putting their own time, money, experience, like expertise into their neighborhood by building a dog park, you know, creating this, then it made us realize that Fountain needs to be able to serve the dogs too, right? So,
and that they take ownership. And, you know, I didn't mention volunteers, but obviously volunteers, they can become your volunteers if you get them engaged just through let's say a design process that you just mentioned, that then they take ownership, and then you may have volunteers.
yeah.
And volunteer activities for folks who need to stay engaged and want to stay engaged and have the wisdom many times about areas that they could contribute their expertise to, can be found by just engaging that community.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that they are the experts of their own community, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's great. We're gonna keep moving forward and continue the conversation at the same time. But I'm really excited to put all this together with Kevin's portion of this, because in the end, I think it's about the infrastructure, it's about the access and the connectivity, and then it's about the programming, right? And how you engage people to really be there and provide programs if needed, right, that serve your users or that help you achieve your goals of creating livable open spaces and buildings, outdoor spaces. Kevin Swanson is with Miami County Parks. He has 15 years experience working in Ohio Parks and Recreation. And his focus really is in conservation, resource management, strategic planning. When we prepped yesterday, you could kind of feel his passion around all these as he started to share the work that he's been involved in with Miami County Parks the past 15 years. He's currently serving as the president of the Miami County Visitors Bureau and on the coalition board for the Great Miami Riverway. I encourage you to take a look at all the websites, but actually, Kevin, I just want to say, like, to your marketing department or your people, your website looks great. And I love the way you guys are promoting parks through your social media. And I feel like even just looking at the brand and your images, it's inviting. It really makes you want to go. And I know you kind of mentioned that yesterday, but I'm going to turn it over to Kevin. There he is. Thank you.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thanks for the intro. Oh, great to be here today, guys. It's my pleasure, really. And I wanted to kind of jump in and just give everybody a little bit of background on park districts in Ohio. It's not something everybody knows and understands how this works, but it's very unique to Ohio. So technically, Miami County Park District, we are the same as Five Rivers Metro Parks from a legal standpoint. So back over 100 years ago, the state of Ohio decided to create park districts or allow local counties to do so. And the reason they did that was primarily for land preservation and conservation. The state did not want to go and be responsible for doing these activities all over in individual counties. Now, if you go to a different state, you might hear a district, but it will probably be more focused on recreation. So given that standpoint, in the original Ohio Revised Code, what we were charged with was to protect land, right? And do conservation work. Now, outside of that scope, what a park district decides to do, it's kind of up to your board and it's kind of up to your citizens. So I wanted to throw that out there, just give a little background. Here's our mission, and I highlighted some things here. we feel very strongly about outdoor experiences, right? So we protect the natural world, but then we want to provide access. Okay, so what is an outdoor experience? Well, we want to connect people with nature. And then there's your word livability again. I did not put that word in there for this presentation. It was in there. So that's what we tried to do. Now, the challenge, and I have a lot of photos in here that are going to tell a story. So go ahead, Leslie, move ahead. The challenge here can be for a nature-based organization like ours, how do you provide access to natural landscapes where it might not be so easy, right? And here's my first example. This is Charleston Falls. It's outside of Tip City. Absolutely beautiful limestone cliffs, 37-foot waterfall. But you can't really go and build an accessible trail down. People love this most visited park, and you can see why, but it's not so easy to get access to all different forms of transportation. So this is an example of a park. So I broke this presentation down in 3 things: parks, programs, and special events. So go ahead, Leslie. So here's what we did. We decided that, you know, everybody cannot get access down a stairway to what could potentially be a slippery boardwalk. So several years ago, we intentionally upgraded a overlook area, and that's what you can see here. Now, we didn't want to go into this natural park and pour a bunch of asphalt or concrete back in here, but we did what we could do, which was to create a safe, visually appealing overlook where we could get things like walkers and wheelchairs right up to the viewing point. All right, let's go to the next one. So this is another one. This is actually outside of Covington, Ohio. This is a brand new feature that we created a couple years ago, where we had 2 parks that were not physically connected. We have some very beautiful trails along the Stillwater River, but maybe you would have to walk a mile to a mile and a half to get down to them. So what we did, we worked with the state of Ohio to create this 170-foot suspension bridge. Now, is it fully accessible? Not necessarily, but at least providing the access point where someone can park within, say, a quarter mile and get down to both sides of the river. We were very excited about this project, and it's gotten a lot of attention. All right, let's go ahead. So this is our newest building. Believe it or not, the Park District's been around for more than 50 years, and we never had an indoor programming space until we built this community hall. Now, this is fully accessible with a restroom, handicap amenities, and you can see how somebody could very easily park and get right up to this building. We've had multiple 90th birthday parties here. We've had everything from our education programs to public programs, and we have gotten a lot of interest from our community partners for this building. Just because there's not so many options in this area for a meeting space of this size. So this is another new project that we've been very excited about. This is called Heritage Hall, and it is out here at Lost Creek Reserve, which there again is a natural setting where we try to be careful about altering the natural setting while still getting people access to it. Okay, so then I wanted to give some examples of programs. We offer some things, some of it intentional, some of it accidental, where we invite different age groups to come out. Now, what we found with adult hikes is it's very socially driven. People like to interact with each other. They like things like Becky referenced, bird watching, hiking for their health, and then talking with other adults that they can connect with. Here's another example. The gentleman on the right, that is one of our rangers. Now, the difference, and Becky, you can appreciate this, between a police officer and a park ranger is greater than you would think. One of the important things that we look to our rangers is to be a connection, right, to the community. And we want them to be approachable. A lot of times, certain segments of society see law enforcement as negative, and that's not what we want. So we do connections with different ages of citizens through planned programs and then through things which we call naturalists. Sometimes we will just send a naturalist out on a trail and they'll go walk and connect with people. So this is a couple of examples of some of our programs.
Will you talk a little bit about the Women in the Creek? Will you explain how you made that happen?
Well, we encourage different experiences. So this is what I talked about. We have a mindfulness trail, which other park districts do. But when we do some of these activities in nature, we encourage people to get engulfed in the experience, right? So take your shoes off. As long as you can do it safely, take your shoes off, become part of the earth. And in this case, these ladies did that on their own accord. Let's put our feet in the water and create an experience for ourselves. But you can see, if you look at those ladies, you can see them supporting each other. You can see them bonding through an experience. That's exactly what we encourage people to do. Okay, so go ahead to the next one. Okay, so we also offer a trail run. It's a 5K race series. We've been doing this for 12 years. Now, when people hear 5K, a lot of times they think competitive, you know, how can I beat my co-runners? But we've spun our activity to be friendly to all different ages. Okay, we have a lot of walkers who do our races, and we encourage that. We use a timing company, but it is not competitive on all levels. You can also see the woman sitting on the right looks like she's getting her blood pressure taken. And in fact, she is. So we intentionally partnered with our local health department to make these races a competitive series for those who want that, but then a health benefit for the general public, right? So we started doing health assessments for all of our participants. We did BMI, we did blood pressure, and then people can come out and track their success or their health numbers throughout the series. So we've been very happy with this, and our response for the community for our trail run has been great. Hey, we have some other programs that we've done. We actually have gone into some assisted living facilities because we just know it's unfortunate and it can be a sad story that some people cannot get out. And some of these facilities are good at providing programs and others have limited resources. So we actually decided years ago that we were going to take our things and go into the facility for those people who cannot get out. So you see a transition from a public walking program in the park to taking our stuff for a resource within a facility where somebody just cannot get out. So that's what you're looking at here. And here again, this is a partnership, right? So at the Park District, in our community, we do not live on an island. We create as many partnerships as we can with both public agencies and with private. So you can see in this case, this is a field trip where we are as welcoming as we could be. We allow the transportation, special access where it could help. And then we try and plan these activities for our parks that aren't as challenging for access, right? So you can see in this case, there was a bus that was able to pull up directly to an accessible sidewalk. We planned that out. The first slide I showed was Charleston Falls. Maybe this type of activity wouldn't have worked in that landscape. Go ahead, Leslie. We did a program several years ago called Active Living Every Day. And this was a little bit outside the box for us. This was a program that was through the CDC, and it was designed to just encourage active behavior, especially in older adults. So this is another one where it's kind of a unique partnership. We wouldn't have done this by ourselves, but we actually partnered with the YMCA, and we went into the YMCA, assisted doing some classes, and then as part of that class, we invited people to come out to do nature hikes. Okay, that's what you see on the right. Some people actually experiencing our corn maze that we do in the fall. Okay, and then we're transitioning here to one of our special events. So we do a very large fall festival at our farm park here on the east side of Troy. And about 10 years ago, somebody saw this idea and we thought it was a great idea. What we're doing here is we're creating a relaxing and welcoming station for mothers and those caring for young children. So what we call it is a lullaby lounge, right? So people can go to a nice quiet place, have some privacy, have an activity for a younger sibling, and can kind of take a break while at the festival. All of us who have had young children and have carried them around to an event, maybe it's 4 hours, 6 hours, you get to a point where you need to take a break. And that's what we tried to create at our large festival. So what this did was this kind of spurred another activity. Why don't you go ahead to the next one? Okay, and I'm going to look to some professionals like Leslie. Maybe you could talk about these things a little bit more because you probably know more about these. We were approached by our local agency, Riverside, who does work with adults with disabilities. And we were asked, hey, we just got this new amenity. Would you guys like to use it at your festival? And of course, we thought it was a great idea. And so we included it. This is called a universal changing station. This is a pretty new thought process. I know, Leslie, that you've done some training on these. We decided that we were going to include this, and it's portable, and we could choose the location. And we tried to choose somewhere there again that was right next to a accessible walkway. So, Leslie, maybe you could just give a little bit of background about the story on these and where this trend is going.
Yeah, so these were also introduced to me recently through our Institute for Livable, Equitable Communities. We had the Changing Spaces, Ohio Changing Spaces chapter come and speak with the Montgomery County Disability Services and Developmental Disability Services. And it was very eye-opening to all of us. The woman from Changing Spaces brought her adult son in. And so her personal experience raising him and caring for him has really inspired her to be a national advocate for proper bathrooms for everybody. And the reason they call them universal is it's not just, it's all ages, right? We need all ages universal, not just adult changing tables, but child changing tables, and how we develop a universal changing station that can work for all people. It's really impressive. I think Ohio is somewhat spearheading it based on this woman's advocacy. I know she presented to the Montgomery County commissioners, and the county commissioners were sold instantly. Because when you hear the story and you understand the challenge, it's a no-brainer. That's exactly what Judy Dodge said. It was a no-brainer. Commissioner Dodge said, no-brainer. And therefore, as a county, we're installing more universal changing stations than almost anywhere. We're looking at the libraries, the Ys, all these things. We got to Metro Parks. They got to Metro Parks. They talked to Karen Hesser and her team, and they're installing one at Possum Creek, which is the only facility that could handle the dimensions. But they've also internally passed a policy that all new builds will require this. And that's what Changing Spaces Ohio is working on, is getting really international building code changes to require this. Because as what we learned, you can get to an accessible playground, you can get to an accessible theater, any public space you can get to that's built to be accessible for all people, all ages, all abilities. But if there isn't a restroom, they can't go, or they might need to turn around as soon as they get there. And that was this woman's story, stories of people having to use the floor, of the bathroom floor, and in their car, their van, right? And as people age, that's not comfortable to get to use the bathroom in the bathroom or in your car. So it really became a human dignity issue, really, is in the end, is in how are we, allowing people to have the basic human rights of bathrooms. So I'm really impressed that Miami County has received the request from Riverside to do this at the festival. Montgomery County actually has one that travels, a mobile universal changing station that you can request for your events. And so I think that's just really progressive. And if it's new to you, that's because I think it's new to all of us, right, Kevin?
Yeah,
It just
right.
just kind of came.
Right. So what I'm trying to paint the picture here with these slides is kind of showing you, we at the Park District, we are, our responsibility is to protect the natural environment and provide open space access. It's not always so easy across the board to all different needs. So we do things like this, things like the Lullaby Lounge, and things like going into facilities where people cannot come out. These are all things that we're not required to do, but we see a need in the community and we're trying to meet those needs. So that's kind of what I was trying to paint a picture here at the Park District. What Becky started off today is absolutely correct. The need for nature and the need for outdoor accessibility has been proven time and again. And especially after the pandemic, people began to realize that that was an important part of their health and wellness, was to get outside. The first park I showed you guys, Charleston Falls, we actually had to close that park at the beginning of the pandemic because we could not control the traffic. That's how bad people wanted to get outdoors. And so all the research is pointing more and more towards this as a very important component to an individual's health and wellness. And so that's what we're charged with, is to get people outside, encourage experiences in nature. And we love it, and we're passionate about it. So I appreciate the time today.
Well, and you guys are doing an excellent job of it. I mean, you said that you mentioned yesterday that your social media folks will post something and within an hour or two, people are at that location in your parks to experience it. So people are craving this. And some of the things you just made me think about, Kevin, was, and Becky, you'll be familiar with this too. Richard Love's work around Leave No Child Inside was incredibly successful. We created a Miami Valley Leave No Child Inside chapter, and it was incredibly impactful, right? His work, and he wrote the book Last Child in the Woods. And so I just had this aha moment, Becky. I'm telling you, I had this aha moment of like, why just children, right? Why is it Leave No Child Inside, and why is it Leave No One Inside? And it made me start thinking of how to asset map what we already have, right, in regards to that movement and how we can shift that movement into an all ages movement. So for example, I am going to put you on the spot, Becky. So for example, how do you take something like Adventure Central and make that for all ages? And so for those of you who don't know, Adventure Central is an amazing model nationally that for some reason hasn't really been replicated. But, three leaders ago at Metro Parks, Marva Linsky identified that children in urban areas need opportunities to connect with nature. And what came of that vision is Adventure Central, a partnership with Ohio University, OSU Extension, 4-H, and Five Rivers Metro Parks. It's right along the Wolf Creek corridor, which Ellen talked about, and how we can make that more accessible to the neighborhoods. But Adventure Central has provided a home for children after school to be in a family environment, get healthy meals, support in their schoolwork, but all through the lens of connecting with nature. And the importance of that is to everybody's entire well-being. And so, wonder if Adventure Central could also serve serve the older population, and how we use places like that, or Boonshoff Museum, places that are used to focusing on youth education and nature, and make it more holistic.
Well, I can speak to what I know right now, is the first they have a summer program, and the first graduation celebration from that summer program, I think it was my first year with Metro Parks. And I'll tell you, aside from, there were testimonials from the kids, but probably aside from that, what the parents or guardians had to say were, to me, just or more impactful, because of that program, because the parents or the guardians are required to be engaged. They can't just drop off the kids and it's all yours. They have to be engaged in making sure that the kids who are participating are showing up and doing what they say they're going to do. But I remember hearing a father talk about the only reason he ever went camping, first time ever camping, was because they did a camping trip through Adventure Central. And he would have never done it. And he was so excited. And now I don't know where he is today, but I'm hoping he's still camping. So, there's a lot of reasons we're hoping, we've been working on that for years and continue to do. Looking at how Adventure Central can be in other places. And there's variations of it, not just in Ohio, but across the country. But it's that intergenerational connection. Doesn't have to be one or the other. And I think that intergenerational connection for older adults is critical to them feeling, and for younger folks to value those aging older adults. And
Glad you said that, because it's mutually beneficial. It's like
Yes.
the more we spread this
Yes.
generational conversation, the better. Sorry.
Yes. And I'm sorry. And the other thing I'll say too, and I mentioned it, I think the other day, was it's so imperative to get kids involved in nature as young as you possibly can, so that they become and understand the value of, no child left behind, inside, no child left inside. And it's so critical, because then they become the advocates and they understand the value, and they become the adults and they become the leaders, and they're the ones who need to see change in the world and lead it. And so if you get them started young and instill that, I know, Leslie, you do that a lot. I know with your kids, you have from the beginning. I know lots of you have, but it's so important, because otherwise they don't know. We've heard kids say at Carriage Hill Metro Park, "Oh, I thought milk came from the store, not the cow." And so that awareness of getting young kids involved right away is critical, I believe, to the health and wellness of communities.
Becky, you're absolutely right. And this is a cultural thing, right? You need to, and it's not easy to change culture, but you can influence it, right? And so we have generations of children that we've been putting through our environmental education programs. And now the first generation of kids, well, guess what? Now they're 35, 40 years old. And if they stay here in our county, they learned to appreciate time outside. Right. And so, and it's not easy. We're battling things now as adults with screen time and what have you, and social media. It's not an easy fight, but if we can just influence that culture from one generation to another, that's where you really make your impact. So
I'm going to put something in the chat here on just the Ohio Leave No Child Inside movement, as that might be a new term to some of you. But I do think the shift of making sure we're thinking of everybody in that regard. I know we're going to have Georgianne, I think Georgianne.
Leslie, yeah, before I go to Georgianne, and I'm almost there, Georgianne, there's a question here. Have you discussed options with the National Museum of the Air Force? They deal with a large population of older adults. Although most displays are inside, there are significant outdoor walking trails. Just someone chiming in from our chat box. Thank you, David.
No, that's a great point. And that's kind of where I was heading when I was thinking about asset mapping. What are our resources existing that people go to for programming? And how do we actually get into those deeper discussions on, what kind of programming, what kind of opportunities are there? Is it accessible for everyone? And I hadn't thought of the Air Force Museum. That's a great one. It's probably one of the most visited. I'm sure it's the most visited site in the region. And we attract visitors from around the world and country at that site. So I think we'd have a desire to make sure we're doing the best we can in that regard too, as being a destination for people. And those of you familiar with Boone Shop Museum, I really do think the Boone Shop Museum of Discovery has a big potential, as well as Carillon Park, and places that are already attracting a diverse range of populations and ages at their places. So Excellent. Donna, any other questions in the chat?
Yes, no, I think you know what, all three speakers, wow. I mean, just all of us, and as we listened to you, there was just so many layers of insights that we're going to need to ponder. And to that end, I'm going to tell everyone there's a link there. You'll be seeing a recording, the slides, etc. Bear with us. Those will trickle out in the coming days. But happily, Councilperson Georgianne Gotzi from Harrison Township is here and on her video, and she's the story we were looking to kick off with. And you know what, we're going to cap off this conversation with your story. Georgianne, can you share with us?
I can. Actually, what happened was that obviously we had our tornado in Harrison Township and our damages to Sinclair Park and Shiloh Park. And through that, we were obviously repairing and recovering from that. But as Age Friendly came into the picture, we were in the midst of restoring our walking path. And we had already put in our playground, but we did not have any benches. We had a huge park and no benches, which you have added to that for me, because now I can point out to them that they need to be senior benches. But in addition to that, we were able to put in a walking path that had a short version and a long version, depending on how far you wanted to walk. And it could accommodate those with disabilities or wheelchairs or even bicycles. So I thought it was the first step for us, and it just fit right into this program. So, but
Awesome.
I do want to share that I've just heard some really valuable presentations in this, and felt it was really worthwhile to understand the other things that we could use moving forward.
Georgianne, thank you for sharing that. And we're going to get some slides from you, and we'll share this in other ways too, so you can get some visuals on this. You know, it takes a village, and boy, oh boy, what a lively conversation we had today. I put a link in the chat box for this Miami Valley Age Friendly Network, and you'll continue to see resources, including the recording of this session, go up to maybe today, tomorrow, as soon as we can do that. We thank you for your leadership around all things age friendly, and we will be back in touch as we have the next conversation.
Yeah, let me chime in quickly too. So we're really happy to partner with the Dayton Foundation, and this work would not exist without the Dayton Foundation. I just want to mention that. I know Lee's on here from the Dayton Foundation, and we really value their partnership. It is about partnerships in this work and all of our work here in Dayton. We're a very collaborative community, and Dayton Foundation is often at the table supporting these initiatives. So I just want to point that out. We wouldn't have Donna's work without the Del Mar Fellowship. We wouldn't have these age-friendly communities without the small grants that the Del Mar Fund was able to provide to the communities to do the needs assessment and get into the action planning stages. So it's crucial. It's incredibly important. They're also providing the funding for the second round of grants that we're giving to our currently age-friendly AARP communities. So I'm kind of hoping you hear this, Georgianne, and all you in your second year, because if you're in your second year of planning, and Kevin, Miami County is, you could partner with Miami County to apply for anywhere from $2,000 to $10,000 for just small projects to get going, to get you excited more in your communities about this work. So whether it's to fund a bench that Ellen said, or do a pilot program, but it might be small ways to enhance your current spaces that you're already doing this work, and actually just get more people on board, maybe find a new partnership. So you can contact Donna or I about those grants if you're in your second year of your age-friendly work. They're responsive grants. We're looking at you telling us what you need. So it's simple and easy. It's not a federal grant. This is a simple, easy application. And we're happy to share that with you. We are, I'd also like you to know that Donna's been working hard to plan an event on May 8th for our Age Friendly Network. So May 8th will be a Miami Valley Age Friendly Network meeting, a longer meeting, more of a half day focus on housing. Looking at housing. Housing has come up in almost all of our communities' needs assessment in their first year as being a challenge, a need, and an issue. So just save the date for May 8th. They want to put that out there as we close. And
yeah,
then,
save the date on the May 8th. We're also going to look at civic engagement and employment. And we've got Joe Morgan, former CEO at Standard Register, is going to do our opening keynote. So it's a wonderful half day for people, for civic leaders like yourselves, for nonprofit leaders, and even for-profit leaders that serve the age 60 plus population. I just had to chime in on that. And Ellen Sizer, I feel like a volume discount on age-friendly benches. I got to talk to you about that on this. I'm feeling something happening here with these grants. Sorry, back to you, Leslie.
Yeah, that's great. And I'm gonna wrap up. We're at 11:26, so we're right on time. And I actually want to thank the speakers so much because I really enjoyed our time together yesterday, prepping for the meeting. And I think you all have a lot to offer and share. I encourage people to reach out to each of them individually. You know, maybe Becky's retired. We got to get her permission maybe, but Ellen and Kevin have a lot to offer, and I'm sure they're happy if you reach out to share models. We don't need to recreate the wheel. Are you willing, Becky?
I retired from my position.
Okay. Well, you know, I've been waiting for
Happy to reach out to me. I have no problem with that.
that'd be great. So let's just keep doing the best we can in this work and see how we can better serve the region and the communities that we work for. And I appreciate you all being here today from wherever you are in the Zoom world. And I think if I could, let's just maybe all make a promise to ourselves to get out today and enjoy some fresh air and think about this talk deeply and reflect on it and reflect on how we can all do better together in the work. So go outside, give yourself some nature bathing, right? Take off your shoes if you're willing, right? Ground yourself, whatever you do. But let's all make that commitment to each other today to do that so we can do better.
Thank you.
We will get everything on the website soon. Thanks, Ellen. Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you.
Thanks, Becky. Yep. And Donna, thank you as well. We'll see you later.